Well, welcome to the Kidlit Distancing Social. I'm Laura Backus, publisher of the Children's Book Insider newsletter, and we are happy to have you all here tonight for a very exciting guest. So for those of you who are new to our Kidlit Distancing Socials, if you would like to get on our list to be notified of our guests every week and also other things that we do, you could go to writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet, and you'll get on our list and you will get a free ebook where we put 30 years of knowledge of writing for kids we distilled it down into an ebook to get you started. And that is your gift for free for signing up to be notified of all the fun things that we do. One of the things we've been doing for 30 years is publishing the Children's Book Insider, which is a monthly newsletter for children's book writers. And it's about, well, it started out as 8 pages a month. Actually, it started out at 6 pages a month, way back. This was before we were electronic and I had to, type everything out, cut and paste it, take it to the printer. Then we expanded to 8 pages and now we're at an average of about 20 pages a month. And it's packed with information on how to write, interviews with authors. We have a special spotlight feature every month where we have an interview with either an editor or an agent, and they give us a special above the slush pile code that as a subscriber you can use to submit to them and leap to the top of the submission pile. So that's really awesome. And you will also have access to our CBI Clubhouse, which is our online membership site that has 30 years worth of information. This is our 30th year of publication. So the link on your screen, writeforkids.org/CBI, gets you that subscription for $5 a month. It's a monthly subscription. You can cancel at any time. If you would rather sign up for a whole year at once for $49.95, you could go to writeforkids.org and then at the top of the page, click on Join the Insiders. So this is where you send me pictures of where you are and I get to see where you've been and what you're doing with your life. Some literary connection here. So this is a cool one today. Obviously it's a bookstore, but I want you to guess who owns this bookstore and where it might be, because there's a very significant literary connection to this particular bookstore. So anybody have any guesses they want to throw into the chat box? Dory Carroll sent this in, and I know you're here today, Dory, so thank you for this. And I will give you a guess. It's not on the West Coast, or I'll give you a clue. South Carolina, nope. Hyde Park, New York, no. Nope, it's not New England. Go south. Oh, you got it, Pat. Pat got it. Pat, do you know where this is? Before I announce your winning guess here. It's okay. Oh, Latina says Savannah. No, but you're going in the right direction. Key West. You're right, Pat. You're right, Pat. So this Books and Books is a bookstore in Key West owned by none other than Judy Blume, the very famous and legendary and iconic children's book writer. And the cool thing is when Dory contacted Judy Blume's people and asked if we could use this picture, her assistant, Joanne, wrote that most days, not when there's a pandemic, but in normal times, Judy Blume is in the store working. And if you're in Key West and you stop into this bookstore, you can say hi to Judy Blume. So isn't that awesome? So if any of you have any plans to go to Key West, you definitely have to check this out because that is very cool. And way back the very first year that I was publishing Children's Book Insider, I interviewed Judy Blume. In fact, I'll need to run that We all year we're running old articles from vintage CBI, and I'll have to run that interview. I don't think I've done it yet this year. She was delightful. She was wonderful, and as you would expect. So I might have already rerun that, but I will find out. If not, I'll put it in an issue coming up. Yes, Liz, I want to go there now too. Soon we can all go there. Okay, so again, I want to see where you are, what you're up to. So take a picture of yourself or not. It could just be a picture of some literary landmark or some writing related place that you have been, and email it to me with a brief description of where it is and permission to use the photo, and attach it as a JPEG, and I will feature your travels on a future Kidlit distancing social. You can mail it to mail@writeforkids.org and put "where in the world" in the subject line. Okay, now we get to celebrate, my favorite part of every week. I have so many great celebrations. I have 2 slides this week. So Namrata Agarwal, newest picture book, The Grasshopper and the Owl, illustrated by Lisa Wee, was just published by Azbuki Very Publishing Agency. So congratulations on that. That is a very cool cover. I love it. Jules Hartley has self-published both English and Spanish editions of her novel, Save Your Prayers, and her picture book, Mornin' the Superbird, within the last year. And she has another one in the works. Isn't that amazing? And she said, "Thank you so much. My books have been saved by your writing blueprints." So thank you for saying that, Jules, and congratulations on being so incredibly productive in the last 12 months. And Loriana Raymond Duvernell's first picture book, Under in the Mud, was published earlier this month by Orange Hat Publishing. It's an adaptation of the song Over in the Meadow, and the book features 10 different animals and how they survived the winter. And the book reached #1 on Amazon's children's environment and ecology books soon after it's released. It's only been out like a week, and will be featured on the EEK website as a live reading on December 2nd. So that is awesome. So congratulations, Loriana. That's really exceptional for your first book, and I wish you the best of luck with it. So I want to hear your good news. Email mail@writeforkids.org and put "celebrate" in the subject line, and we will feature you on a future distancing social. And it doesn't have to be a publication. It could be that you finish your first draft of your manuscript. That's a huge milestone, and we want to celebrate every little step with you. Okay, I have one really cool link of interest this week. The Chicken Soup for the Soul, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. They're a whole bunch of anthologies of short, true essays, all based around a theme. And they have several deadlines coming up for new anthologies that they are publishing. 2 of them, Chicken Soup for the Teen Soul and Chicken Soup for the Preteen Soul, have submission deadlines of December 15th. So those are the ones coming up the earliest, the quickest. So I wanted to alert you to that. They are specifically looking for writers for those anthologies who are under the age of 35. So if you are a more mature author, but you want to lie about your age, I say go for it. No, but also if you go to this link on your screen, they will have the list of all the anthologies coming up and all the topics, and there are deadlines over the next few months. So check that out. And if you don't want to write down that whole link, you could go to chickensoup.com and click on books on the homepage and then submit your story, and you will get all of the details there. And that's a really great writing credit for you to have, even if you haven't published anything else. That is a great thing to put on your writing resume. So definitely check that out. All right. Now I am very, very excited to introduce our guest tonight. So Kevin Carroll, also known as the Catalyst, is on a mission to empower greatness in individuals and organizations through the power of positivity, creativity, and play. He's an author and an instigator of inspiration. Isn't that awesome? Who brings a playful curiosity, a keen understanding of human nature, and a lifelong love of competition to all of his endeavors. He's given multiple TED Talks and has helped turn creative ideas into reality for Fortune 500 companies, professional sports leagues, and global nonprofits. Now, he's written 4 books, 2 of which are geared to kids. What's Your Red Rubber Ball? In this book, he leads teens and tween readers through a series of exercises designed to help them discover their red rubber ball, which is a dream to chase for a lifetime. And I love that that is geared to that age and getting them thinking on that path already. And then a kid's book about belonging was published in 2019 by the newly formed publisher A Kid's Book About, where Kevin also acted as the creative collaborator and encourager for the publisher's co-founder, Jelani Memory. A Kid's Book About titles were chosen recently by Oprah for her favorite things 2020 holiday list, which is huge. So we're going to talk about the concept behind those books as well in a minute. So I'm really happy to welcome Kevin tonight to help us understand how to approach big ideas for kids in our books and to turn our creative dreams into reality. So welcome, Kevin. So happy to have you here.
How are you? I'm
I'm
excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure, sure. So let's start. I want to hear a little bit about you and kind of who you are. I've listened to a lot of your TED Talks and other videos you have online. And I have to say, I always come away feeling extremely inspired and uplifted and empowered. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to encourage everybody to just go on YouTube and type in Kevin Carroll, and you're going to find all sorts of great talks that he's given. But you talk a lot about your life, and you share a lot of your personal story in what you teach. And do you think that that is really your sort of magic for connecting with your listeners and with your readers, just being so personal and opening yourself up so much like that?
I think it's so important to be vulnerable when you're trying to connect, and people then appreciate that vulnerability and your level of transparency. And especially when I'm talking to young audiences, it always seems to be this amazing kind of unlock for them where they go, well, that's my story too. And it's both inspiring for me, but also heartbreaking that the similar situation that happened to me is still happening,
Right.
in current times. And so I always say, your willingness to be transparent and vulnerable, especially to young people, always allows them to lean in a bit more into your story, and you show up more authentic to them versus this pat kind of conversation and these canned answers, and you're, waxing philosophy in front of them and trying to put on airs. And I would rather be approachable with my energy, and my story really helps that way. And I think that's a big part of what I endeavor to do all the time when I'm talking to any audience, but especially when I get around young people. And one of the things that I actually do, which is interesting, in my contracts for speaking engagements, I actually build in an extra day when time allows, and I let the organization that had me come to speak to their business gift me to the community. And so that's the way I actually get in front of young people in schools, community centers, nonprofits within cities all over the world. So I've been actively doing that for like 18 years now. So it's allowed me to show young people that your circumstances don't have to dictate your destiny, that you can find a way to rise above. And I'm, literally showing you that this is truth. I found a way. And I had, a lot of upheaval and uncertainty and all the challenges I faced as a child, but look what happened. And look how I did it too, right? So I unpacked that for them, the whole process, so that it's not just like, oh, well, that's just you. That could only happen for you. No, actually, that could happen for you too. If you put in place these certain things and do these things and find your own way. And so mine is just a bit of an inspiration and a wayfinder for them, but it's not like I always tell them, you're going to find your own. And so I just hope this is encouraging for you, but also that you see yourself in my story. And I think that's what I found has been really, really beneficial to those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And kids can detect BS a mile
Oh,
away.
oh, they can smell it coming in they can smell it like as soon as you come up on that stage or in that gym. I always say, you know, to a lot of my other speaker friends, I said, when's the last time you've been in a high school gym, bleachers pulled out on both sides, you're center court, and you have to hold the attention of 2,000 high school kids who will get cred for acting up?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I've done it so much. I know who I need to win, like, you know, win the crowd, win your freedom. So I know where that group is in that gym because the assistant principal or principal always stands by them. Always, always. And so, there's my goal right there. If I can get them, then everyone else will fall in line. It's the way it works. And so I've learned a little, you know, these cheat codes and these little unlocks and things, but I've spent a lot of time around young people. I just have. And I know that that's partly my calling too, that someone did that for me. And so I in turn need to be carrying that forward. And that was a promise I made to the woman who was probably the most instrumental person in my life, my best friend's mom, Miss Lane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. And that's good advice for authors who are doing school visits. Watch where the principal stands and win those kids over, hold their attention, and then you've got everybody. I love
Honestly,
that.
you do. Yeah, it works. It works. Believe me when I tell you. Principals are always quite surprised that I know that. I'm like, I've been in plenty of schools, so I know. Like, you're going to go stand by that group. It always happens because don't embarrass us. We have a guest here.
Right, right.
So, yes.
That's great. That's great. So what I know a lot of children's book writers kind of struggle with is, and it seems to be, especially when they're writing for sort of that middle grade and young adult age, they want to give advice to their reader through their characters, through their book. They want to keep the readers from making the mistakes that they might have made. And they come off sounding preachy. They come off sounding like a grown-up talking down. That's not the same as being vulnerable. So what is that sort of little shift in your head that you have to make to really connect eye to eye with your readers?
Being generous. I think it's important that you are demonstrating you're being generous and you're basically squeezing and availing all that you have to offer. And as opposed to, here are my 7 steps.
Yeah.
No, I'm giving you here, I'm going to exhaust everything. I'm going to exhaust everything here. Take this, take this, take this, take this. And I'm not withholding anything from you. They appreciate that generosity. And so I would always start with that generosity of spirit. And they recognize that. They recognize that you're really giving of self that way. You're not withholding something for a bait and switch or some kind of like, oh, you know, if you do that, then you can unlock. No, I think it's really important for them to understand that. But you can also, one of the things that I've learned is you can gamify it a little bit. So you can have this like if then, right? If you do this, then this unlocks and you get this. Oh, okay. I'm in. I'm game to do that. And so you can actually create those moments where you're bringing them along on a journey that way. And it's almost like you're, you know, the video games, you're gamifying it where they get a chance to, if I keep playing, if I stay engaged, there's rewards for that. And each of those unlocks another step, another clue, another thing. And so then when you look at it in totality, oh, wow, I had no idea you were taking me on a journey that way. And so I think that's one of the things that I like to do is I'm a gifter. That's so, you know, what's the love language book, right? And so I kind of flip that around. I'm not good at receiving gifts, but I love to gift. And so that's the way I approach my speeches, my presentations, my visits. I always want to leave behind things, but also leave you better. And that's my promise from the beginning that I say to audiences. I always say that. And I think that comes off in my books also.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. That's a great philosophy and a great way to approach it, I think. So you talk a lot about the importance of play and curiosity. How does this relate to writing for children?
So I think one of the things that I always go back to is curiosity and play actually drove me in my childhood, right? So I say a ball saved my life. We had a playground in our neighborhood. That was my first safe place. For
Mm-hmm.
me, my second safe place was the library, the public library in our neighborhood. I always actually keep with me the first title that I took out. It's not the actual book, but I've had this book for 20 plus years. So this was the first title I actually
Oh
took
yeah.
out, right, of the public library where the wild things are. And it literally set off my love of learning.
Mhm.
And when I read that book, it just sparked something in me. And I became a voracious reader. And I just loved the books. And so this will date me, but I was an SRA kid. So some folks will know SRA and remember that from back in the day. So that was the program I went through, Scholastic Reading Aptitude, I think is what it stood
Mhm.
for.
Mhm.
So I'm an SRA kid. So I love that. I finished that whole program by fourth grade and it was supposed to go all the way through sixth. So I got free time in our school library. So the librarians would leave books for me and I would get to sit in there and read. And then at the public library, the same thing happened also, where the librarians were leaving suggestions for me. So this idea of finding ways to be playful, right?
Mhm.
And finding what brings you joy. I always look at play as what's your joy, what brings you joy. And play to me also equates to what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Mhm.
So if you have something that gets you out of bed in the morning, now how can you be curious about that? To want to learn more and more and be immersed in it. And now let's fast forward to you as an adult. Okay, if I know what gets me out of bed in the morning and I stay curious, I'll set up things to keep me immersed in that. So I have Google alerts. So I use Google to curate for me every day. I set up my alerts within Google. You can be very specific when you put parents around whatever word or series of words. And I get a digest every morning from Google. It's searched the entire world wide web on my behalf for the things that I'm interested in. And I can peruse those, look through them. And if I'm really interested, I'll click on it. But every day I'm getting the same things about what I care about.
Mhm.
So I know what gets me out of bed in the morning. I know what I'm curious about. I find ways to stay immersed in it, and that will inform the work that I do.
Mhm. I love that because instead of just being bombarded with whatever happens to end up on your Facebook feed, which you probably don't want to be seeing most of the time, especially first thing in the morning, just having, like you said, Google does the work for you and it filters out what you don't want and just gives you what you want. I love that. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about a kid's book about this. I love the concept behind this company and I love the books. And I know that you have been kind of involved from early on with a lot of the sort of creative inspiration behind it. So tell us, and to my count, today I went on the website and counted. The company is what, less than 2 years old. It's a new company,
It's only 13, 14 months old.
right? And I counted
Yes.
39 books on their website today, and every time I click on it, there's more books. I mean, it's just amazing. Tell us a little bit about this concept, how it came about, what your role was in the sort of inspiration behind it.
So one of the things that I uh, laugh about and giggle about and find humorous is I never planned on being a collaborator with my son's first friend that he met when we moved from Philly here to Portland, Oregon 23 years ago. So I've known Jelani Memory, who is the CEO and co-founder of A Kid's Book About, since he was 13. So he would come to our house every day. He played soccer and basketball with my son all the way through high school, So they were classmates and teammates in sports. And Jelani was at our house every day. Jelani was always really clever, really creative kid. And so I was, in many ways, like Miss Lane was for me, I encouraged him. So I always would encourage him, hey, Jelani, what are you up to? Oh, I'm into photography now. And do you know any photographers I can meet? Yeah, I can introduce you to some. Hey, I'm into footwear design. I think I want to try that. Hey, I can introduce you to some people in design. He says, hey, I'm thinking about branding. Do you know anybody? So I would always introduce Jelani to these people, and I'd watched him grow into this creative soul. But never did I know that I would end up actually collaborating with him. The first collaboration we did, I actually hired him to do a video for me of the making of my art exhibit that traveled around the US for 2 years. So I had Jelani come, and actually when I was sitting down with the curator in my office, and so he shot the video, and I remember him saying, that was so amazing. You hired me. You hired me. And I said, well, Jelani, I've been watching how you've grown as a creative. I said, I think you're brilliant. And so this might be easily 6, 7 years ago, maybe even longer than that, maybe 10 years ago. And so we did that. But then Jelani and I always talked. He would always come by my office with his ideas, whatever. And one day he comes by, he says, hey, I got this book I did for my kids. I said, what? And he showed me this, a kid's book about racism. And he said, I'm going to leave you this to look at. Let me know what you think about it. So I took it home. I read it. I gave it to my wife, gave it to my daughter to read. And we all were gobsmacked by it. Like it was so simple and so loud. And I called him that evening. I said, Jelani, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. And he says, yeah, I'm thinking I might do a series of books. He said, but I'm not quite sure. And I want it to be a little disruptive in the publishing world, that you get the books done sooner. He said, so we're working through that creative process. Would you be the first author, Kevin, that works with us so that we can kind of work with you? I know you'll be patient with us, and we're going to figure out the creative process. I'm like, sure. So last June, May, June-ish, 2019, we go to this little conference room for 4 hours. He's got a designer, Jelani's facilitating, someone's writing notes, and we go through this creative process together. And he facilitates it, and his designer's showing me like, oh, could it be like this? Could it be like that? And I'm like, that's cool, I like that. And I'm telling this story, and I'm seeing a book be built in front of me. It was blowing my mind, because I had already done 3 other books, and it was nothing like that.
Right.
It was painful. It was painful. So at the end of the session, I said, that was so much fun. And Jelani looked at me and says, that's our benchmark. We want every author to say that it was fun. Fast forward, they launch October of 2019. And my book was the first in the first 6, a kid's book about belonging. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of watched it grow. But he had really modest expectations, and he had ideas about the different topics. And fast forward, COVID happens. Mm. And so things start slowing down. Then the civil unrest happens, and people start searching for things to utilize to talk to their kids about what's unfolding in front of them. I can't hide my children from this. Mm-hmm. They discover a kid's book about. And I'll never forget when Jelani called me, oh my gosh. I'm like, what? He says, you won't believe what's happening. I'm like, what's happening? People have discovered our books, and they're buying them like crazy. I'm like, what do you mean like crazy? He goes, well, in one day, we sold like 30,000 copies. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, I didn't even believe the number. Like, it looked so ridiculous. It starts growing more and more and more and more, to a point during the summer, they sold $1 million worth of books in 1 week and raised $1 million.
Wow.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Jelani, you hear about these phenomena where an idea collides with a moment, but never would I think I would be a part of that. Mm-hmm. with someone I've known for 23 years. And we both just kind of like looked at each other and like, who knew, right? And so I think that's really the magic behind it is, you know, the timing of it. Who would have ever thought Jelani was being, you know, just really, really, I think, thoughtful about the whole process and what he wanted to do and why. And then everything collided.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're where we're at. And I think that they've got a wonderful opportunity to grow something that can really have great impact.
They really do. And I want to show, I have a couple slides with some interiors of the books I want to show in a second, because I think the design is brilliant. I love it. But before we get there, I just want to say this is a perfect example of, if you follow your passion, authors are always saying, should I write to trends? And we always say, no, write to your passion. The trend will find you. And that's exactly what happened here. I mean, there's always an element of luck in publishing
Absolutely.
too, but really he had a vision, he stuck to it. It was unique. It was from his heart. And that's what made it work. And a lot of serendipity, but also, you know, I think his books still would have found the audience. It might have taken longer without the civil unrest and just that series of events, but I think it still would have happened.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's why I've always referred to it as a series of fortunate events, right? That have
Yes,
happened to play out.
sure.
So lemony snickets kind of a
Of
thing. But
course,
yes,
yeah,
but I think that's
yeah,
exactly what happened.
yeah. So let me show a couple of the interiors, because again, I just love the design. So what I love about these books is there's such a powerful graphic image, and we're so used to seeing illustrations in children's books, and these aren't really illustrations in the conventional sense. They are very strong in graphic design, and to me it makes it so much more powerful emotionally and so much more intimate. It's like every reader can put themselves into this book because of the way they're designed. And it feels to me like the author is speaking directly one-on-one with each reader because of the design. And there's something magical about that, as far as I'm concerned. And I was going to ask you if you had any input in the design or how it looked, but it sounds like it just sort of happened around you, which is really exciting.
And I think part of it was the willingness to get out the way
Mm-hmm.
and allow it to become what it was going to become, and not to have such a already formed opinion about how it needs to be. And I think
Right.
Jelani also, what you said, he was democratizing the experience.
Mm-hmm.
He was allowing it to be, you can make it what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So leaving all that space and all that room, that allows the reader to take on what they would like. And I think
Exactly.
that invites you, right? There's space, and that's
Mm-hmm.
by design, right?
Right.
There's that allows the reader to have space to use their imagination.
Mm-hmm. Well, and most of the topics in these books are about emotions and those sort of abstract experiences that you can't really illustrate. It's something you feel. And I think not trying to illustrate it was the right move.
Mm.
Instead, the reader can feel what they feel as
Hmm.
they're reading these words. And it, like I said, it becomes very personal to each reader.
Yes, and a lot of play with color.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things, very intentional around color and the color palettes that they use.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of play on that. And then font play also too, very
Absolutely.
important thing that Jelani looked at too, was just font play. It's not so formulaic. The only
Mm-hmm.
thing that you actually see is consistent is a kid's book about, like on the
Right.
covers, but then the font play is all very different
Yeah.
for each of the books and very unique to the author.
Mm-hmm.
So as a design, they're getting that from that author also. So
Mm-hmm.
the sessions are, as I asked Jelani actually yesterday, have you seen anything different with doing these virtually. And he said, no, actually, they're unique in themselves too, doing it virtually with authors. When we do the workshops, as they call them, when we
Mm,
workshop a book with an author, he said it's just different and unique to virtual. That's all.
right.
But we're getting really amazing outcomes even from virtual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. I love it. And I was really happy that Oprah recognized how awesome these are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lovely bonus. Yes, for
Mhm.
sure.
Absolutely. And I think talking about this design element is very important because a lot of our listeners are self-publishing their own books or thinking about self-publishing. And often people who are writers and not also artists themselves don't understand the importance of the right graphic
Mm,
elements in a book. They think I can hire, my friend who's an illustrator, and your friend might be a great illustrator, but they might not be the right illustrator for what you're trying to convey with your book. And so I want people to really understand that and to see that a graphic designer is as important as an illustrator to your book, because look at what they can do. So,
yeah, and that helps with the flow, the way that
mhm,
the reader is going to experience that. I think that whole element of surprise and delight comes into play through graphic design, and
mhm,
that I think the rhythm too, right? The graphic designers understand the rhythm and how that's playing out, where we're laying, where we're leaving space, room for. So I think they can be really equally important in that process with you.
mhm, mhm. So your book, A Kid's Book About Belonging, I know that I read on the website, A Kid's Book About website, that each author is chosen because they have a personal connection to whatever topic they are writing about. And again, getting back to, we have writers here, they want to know, how do you write about a very sort of emotional topic in a way that will communicate to kids what you want without, again, telling them what to think or telling them what to feel, leaving that space for them. Do you have any tips on that
I
or
think,
advice?
yeah, well, I think, you know, belonging was important to me. It's always been an important
Mhm,
thing as I grew up. But when I was a kid, because didn't have a traditional family dynamic, both my parents were addicts, abandoned me and my two brothers. My grandparents rescued us
mhm,
and raised us as best they could, but we had to raise ourselves. Like literally, my grandfather said that. We're going to give you food to eat, a roof over your heads, but you're going to have to raise yourselves. We're getting older. So at 6 years old, I hear this from my grandfather.
wow,
And so I'm like, well, what does that even mean for me?
mhm,
So, well, let me find a place to belong. That's an innate thing. I want to connect somewhere. So the playground was the first place. And
mhm,
sports became my first thing. But I didn't play sports for trophies or medals or first place. It was always for belonging, being a part of a team. Then the
mhm,
library became my second place because I loved reading, right? And Where the Wild Things Are set me off. And then school became basically that third place for me because teachers really were encouraging when they saw I was a good student. And then my best friend's mom, Miss Lane, became probably the most important place for me because
mhm,
she was that encourager for me. And she happened to be a school teacher, elementary school teacher for 33 years in Philadelphia public schools. And so as I started to understand how important that was for me, I paid attention to how I actually created ways to belong. So you go through my entire journey, I was really intentional about that.
hmm,
And my grandfather would always say, pay attention to your intention.
hmm,
Pay attention to your intention. If that's your intention, then you need to pay attention to that. So I've been really, really very, very intentional about belonging and connecting and relationships. And I'm
mhm,
always told by my friends, you're so good about that. And I always think to myself, well, I needed to be. That was really important for me. So if you're thinking about when you're writing and you're thinking about, the idea of putting yourself in the story or writing from a place of passion, you have to, once again, how are you immersing yourself? What is your origin story around that? Like, why are you even selecting that? Is it
mhm,
because it's trendy or is it because you care about that? And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be directly you, but you've witnessed it, you've been a part of it. That story is a part of your mosaic, as I like to say, right? We're all a mosaic of many experiences. It's one of your experiences. So
Mhm.
that you're always going to emote and share from a different place. And your word selection and the way you deliver is going to reflect that.
Mhm.
So I just think you mentioned it earlier, Laura. It's just, having that passion for it. The audience will find it.
Mhm.
You got to trust and believe that. And my grandfather, I'll quote him a lot because I learned so much from him, but he would always say, doubt is success testing you. So when you're doubting that, I don't know, that's a test. Are you really about that? If you're really about that, you got to trust and believe. So that passion, understanding what you care about all the time, hanging in there, trust and believing, bringing in the right collaborators and partners around that, being intentional around that, and trust and believe. And I had a friend say to me, you don't ever worry about the number of people that are in an audience or in an event. I said, no, I don't. The right ones are there. The right
Mhm.
ones are there. The ones that needed to hear it, they're there. And that's all I worry about. If there's more than that, that's a bonus. And so Miss Lane challenged me when I did my first book. She said, well, there's another you out there that needs to know it's possible. So when I write for that one person that I hope it will get to them.
Mhm.
And so I think that's, the way I approach things. And I think that's one of those things that everyone could really think about, when they're doing, their craft, right? Their art of sharing stories.
Mhm. I totally agree. And I have said this in workshops that I've given to writers, that you can't try to write for everyone, because not everyone is going to want to hear your story. You have to write for, like you said, you identify your audience and you write for them, and don't worry about everybody else. And I think that you just put it in another way. The people who need to be there will be there. The readers who need your book will read your book, and you have to trust that. And I think that's very freeing for a lot of authors to
Mm,
adopt that mindset. They don't have to worry about the millions of people who may not read their book or may not like their book. It doesn't matter. It's not for them. Yeah.
it's not for them, right?
No.
But there is someone, because if you put that energy and time into it, I would hope that you're doing that not for personal accolades, kudos, and all that, right? Writers write for the purpose of sharing information, right? A story, right? To inspire, to inform, to elate, whatever that outcome you want, but it's for an audience. It's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that, then just write in a journal, right? I mean, it's so, but I just think that you're answering a calling when you're a writer. And when you write and that is your profession, my goodness, right? That takes on a whole different thing. So if you're writing for pleasure, it's very different than writing for your profession.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes more energy, more commitment, right? More resolve, more resilience. And so for those of you out there that's your endeavor, your daily endeavor, that's your craft, that's your profession, I just say to you, take good care of you. Your energy is not, you're not a bottomless well of energy. You got to replenish so you can show up, so that a piece of your soul goes out every time you publish that book and you don't get it back. You might get to hear from someone and it might make you, but you're offering a piece of you. And that is not a casual thing.
Right.
It's not.
Mm-mm.
And so I just implore you, you've answered a calling. Take good care of you so that you can honor that calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just applaud you all. I know how hard. I'm a casual writer. I'm not a professional writer. I don't believe that, because it is not the way I make my living. I love words and I make my living speaking, right? And collaborating and being creative. But I have so much mad respect for writers that is their daily thing. Holy crap. That is no joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. So take good care of you. Make sure you are prepared, right, and ready to fight the good fight.
Mhm. That's so true. And you're right. A piece of your soul goes out with every book. And that can take a toll on you if you are not taking care of yourself. You're absolutely right. Yeah. One of the great challenges of being a writer, especially if you want to get traditionally published by a publisher, is sending your manuscript out and getting rejection letters or rejections from agents and having to pick yourself up and send it back out again and again. Do you have any advice for being resilient in that process?
So in that process, and listen, because I'm in the business of ideas, you deal with that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm of the mindset that it's just not time for that. I'm not throwing it away. I put it in that proverbial design wastebasket. I just set it aside because maybe I was too soon with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really look at, those things that come back and say, it's not right, it's not this, it's not that. Fine. You know what? I'm of the mindset that resilience is sustained determination. It is not the bounce back.
Hmm.
I'm in this for the long haul. So I'm going to sustain my determination around this. Now, maybe that idea is not ready. Maybe I need to pivot. That's okay. But are you in a place of abundance or scarcity?
Hmm.
Because that is a bad place for a writer, is to be in scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you stay in abundance? So go back to, how are you staying immersed in your passion, right? Or what are those things that keep feeding your creative soul? How are you feeding yourself? So that, okay, you don't like that, I got more where that came from.
Hmm.
But if you are in this place of scarcity, oh my gosh, that I don't have anything. So how are you making sure that you're ready to fight the good fight on behalf of that? How do you have the resilience to sustain determination?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you agree? That's part of the agreement. I know everybody's not going to get this idea. Doesn't mean it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not time for it, maybe. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe not in this iteration. And maybe I need to look at it in a different way at another point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think these are all things that I've discovered that are really helpful. And so I think the more that we recognize that we're not a bottomless well, how are we feeding our creative soul so that we are staying in that place of abundance as it relates to creative energy and ideas and possibilities? That's going to allow you to withstand that rejection, right? And those moments, and like, okay, let's go, let's dance, let's go. I'm back in it. Let's go. Round 2, round
Right.
3, whatever. So
Mm-hmm. That's great. And by the way, I want to remind people, if you have questions for Kevin, please put them in the Q&A. We'll have them just for a few more minutes, and everybody's just so glued to what you're saying, I think, which is
well,
great.
I hope this is valuable. I just,
It's
I
very
know that,
valuable.
well, good. I just want to make sure that's part of what I've learned, right? I don't want to just be pontificating and everything. I'm trying to make sure that I'm
Mm-hmm.
sharing enough insights or things to assist you all. So it's
Oh, yeah.
important to me. And you guys are important. Please know,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is another me awaiting your story that could spark them to become a Jelani. Please understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that series of events, right? So we're anxiously awaiting that story.
Right. Well, we very much believe that at Children's Book Insider, that a children's book put in the right book in the hands of the right child can change a life, as it did with you. You are the perfect example with Where the Wild Things Are. And I think that is an awesome responsibility that the writers have, but also an incredible opportunity that children's book writers in particular, I think, have. And I think that certainly the people who show up at these socials take that very seriously. And I applaud them for that.
No,
They
that's brilliant.
understand
So
that.
while, yeah, no, I don't doubt that at all, right? And I
Mhm.
think that I get a sense from you, Laura, right? And I would say, so you're the foundational piece of this tribe. So the words you're selecting, the way that you're sharing, the way that you're being so generous with the way that you're tying it all together for them is indicative of obviously the tribe you've created. And so over 30 years of you doing this and nurturing and encouraging, it's all being reflected in the way that you conduct this conversation. So you should know I appreciate you. And little did you know that literally you're saying a word and I'm like thinking this next word and you say that next word. So we're kindred spirits that way, which is real cool. And so just so you know that I've been feeling what you've been dropping. Yes, for sure. So yes. So yeah.
Great. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, I do. Somebody I did happen to see in the chat, they like my hat. So this is the interrobang. So, right, curiosity and excitement is what it reps, right? The grammatical symbol. This is a disjointed one, right? It tend to be connected. My friend noticed that I used it in correspondence quite a bit. So he said, well, you're like the human interrobang. You're about curiosity and energy, dude. So I'm gonna make some hats for you. So this became my symbol, right? Nice. It's kind of like my little thing that I leave behind and stuff. I have stickers that I drop off to people. But when I had this hat, that's always, when someone notices it, I always love that. That means that people are paying attention. Right. And so I appreciate that. I don't know who put that, but I happened to see it in there. So they said, nice hat. So.
That's great. That's great. I think we all need one of those. Well, and we are getting a lot. I just want to read you some of the comments here in the Q&A. Thank you for sharing and for your inspiration. I'll wake up tomorrow with a new passion to write for that one other. This is fabulous. I'm just drinking it in like a thirsty soul. And valuable question mark. What you are saying is way beyond inspiring. So
thank you.
There's a lot of love being reflected back at you.
Someone asked, where do you get the hat? I'll send you a link to the merch. It's rare that I do it, so you have to actually be curious about it. So that was the unlock for you all. So nice. I'll send that to you, Laura, the link for it and stuff. Yeah, and so that way, so you're getting like exclusive access to my merch page. I don't have it on my website or anything. It literally, I wait for someone to ask. So
great. That's great. Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll wear it. I'll wear it at a social. I'll buy one and then people will ask what it is and spread it that way. Let me see again if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, I will I'll come up with a couple more and then Terry says I like resistance equals sustained determination. I loved that too. But sometimes determination is difficult. Are there specific exercises to keep yourself going?
That's a great question. So I always go to energy. So how do I take good care? And because my background, my formal education, my graduate degree and my undergraduate degrees in human performance, athletic training. So I always think about performance, right? And you're competing. You all are competing for attention to your story. So how do you actually get yourself ready for that? What are the things physically that you do to put energy into yourself? So do I go out for walks? Do I work out? Do I make sure that I meditate? What does recovery look like for you so that you can show up each day? And so that's how I look at replenishing, right? And that idea of recovery. So we aren't a bottomless well of energy. We have to take good care of ourselves. So what are those practices that you have? And I have very specific ones. I was in the military for 10 years, so I've learned a lot of discipline and I played sports, but we all need to have disciplines around our energy, especially for people who are in the business of creative output. It is not a bottomless well. You have to put back in. You have to recover so that you can get up ready to fight the good fight and have the requisite energy to turn your ideas into reality. So what are those practices that you're doing? And I don't ever say it's one size fits all. You all come up with what you need to do. Maybe you have to sample a lot of things, but you need to have a practice around recovery and replenishment of your energy, your creative energy.
Very good advice. And I think too often, especially if you are a parent and you're writing, you give your energy to your kids and then whatever.
And there's a pandemic now too.
And there's a pandemic and yeah.
Yes. So you are going to feel like you're even stretched more thin, but then how do you actually build a game plan to attack this moment? Okay, this moment requires, maybe I can only dedicate a short window of time to the craft of my writing because
Mhm.
this is demanding more of my time. That's okay. So now it's like, okay, I can give 15 good minutes to this. And I'll make sure that my children support it because they'll actually be practicing it with me. So I'll model it for them. So
Mhm.
how do we actually start modeling the behavior that we want them to demonstrate out in the world? That's how we're going to become better grown-ups, right? They do what they see.
Mhm.
So if your kids are cutting a fool and acting up, I'm here to tell you, they do what they see.
Exactly.
So the more that you have that awareness and the more that you recognize, okay, this is a unique moment. It's going to require more of my energy and attention. I get it. So maybe this is going to get slowed down, my book, but I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to reimagine the process now and how much time I can dedicate to that. And that's the way it is. Oh, deadlines, deadlines, deadlines. You know what? Talk to your editor, explain what's going on. This is what's happening in real life right now, IRL, right? Like, so look, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that are not going on schedule anymore.
Mhm.
There's a reality to that. So have an honest conversation.
Mhm.
But if you heap, you know, unnecessary burden and worry on yourself, that's going to manifest into you literally shrinking the abundance and your ideas, and you get tight like athletes do, and they don't perform well.
Mhm. Mhm.
You are in your own way an athlete. You are performing.
Mhm.
Your writing happens to be the thing that you do, right? Your arena is words, literary, right? That's it. So you're competing. So every word you select, you know it matters to you. It's not any different than an athlete.
Mhm.
So you need to make sure you have the energy. And if I don't have the requisite amount of time that I typically would dedicate, how do I get it to it's manageable? And
Mhm.
I'm still putting in the right amount of time and I feel good about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's one of the key
Yeah.
things, right? This is a really unique moment in our life.
Mhm.
So all things have to be reimagined, and it's okay. Don't be so hard on yourself. Please.
Mhm.
Please don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think the more that you give yourself room to reimagine, you'll come up with solutions. Is what you do.
Mhm. Absolutely. We have way more power than we realize over everything. We just need to choose to allow ourselves to acknowledge that power and use it. Right.
And as my grandmother said, you got to speak up. A closed mouth don't get fed. So you got to speak up. Speak up sometimes, right?
It's true.
So
That's true. I love it. I love it. Well, I think that is an let me just make sure we don't have any questions. Oh, I do have a couple questions. I was just about to let you go, but not quite. Um, do you have any message or advice for children with self-esteem issues?
Hmm. So because belonging was about my self-confidence, and I dealt with low self-esteem as a child because of my circumstances.
Mhm.
And so what I had to do was find things that I felt that I was good at or someone acknowledged I was good at.
Mhm.
So with children with low self-esteem or that are dealing with that, how do we give them as many opportunities to try things that they may actually have a hidden talent, a gift for? And not like, oh, they're going to be professional at that, but no, they have an interest in it. And how do we nurture that? Because that's what's going to lift them up to have confidence.
Mhm.
And I think the more that we can assist them with that, with finding things to get them out of bed in the morning.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, what's their passion? But
Mhm.
you also need to tell your story of discovery, how you discovered the thing that gets you out of bed, and not just that it's them, because parents will do that all the time, right? That's an easy out. No, what gets you out of bed? What else? What brings you joy? What inspires you? Because when you talk to them and let me help you find that, I think that can really help with bolstering someone's self-esteem because I know what I stand for. I know what I like. I know what inspires me. I know what gets me out of bed in the morning and why. And I can tell you why.
Mhm.
So I think that can be something that can help young people, especially that are facing that challenge. It's
Mhm.
not insurmountable. You can find a way. But I
Right.
think that the grown-ups in their lives are going to have to help them.
Mhm. I completely agree. And I think with anybody, discovering that passion leads you on the path to finding purpose. And I think purpose is also something that at least gets me out of bed in the morning when I feel that I have a calling, I have something to give to the world. And that comes through the passion, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
But those things, when we harken back, you can look at your adult self, but I always say you can go back to an innocent moment of inspiration in your childhood.
absolutely. Hmm.
That was the genesis of that.
Hmm.
And so that origin story awaits everyone, but they
Hmm.
need the grown-ups in their lives to give them room to sample and try things.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important for the grown-ups in the lives of children, whether
Yeah.
you're formally part of their family or not. I think that you can really have an amazing impact on a life.
Hmm.
So writers obviously can be a part of that equation.
Right. No, I completely agree. And that's interesting what you said. I was just thinking about my son who's 24, and he's an artist, and he's creating a business right now around his art, which is awesome. But it started, when he was 17, we spent a month in San Francisco, and we drove from Colorado, and he had never drawn anything, but he bought a sketchbook and a pencil to take in the car. And he started drawing on the way out. He drew the entire month. He drew the entire way back. And by the time he got back, his art was like 1,000 times better than
Mm-hmm.
when he started. And he became an artist in that month. And he is now building a business around it, and
Hmm.
so it's interesting how you
How
see
old was he then?
he was 17 when he picked up the sketchbook for the first time. He had done some art earlier. He'd always drawn comics and stuff as a kid. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. But
Yeah.
this was like a different kind of art that he just found his voice as an artist
Mm.
in that car ride. It was amazing. And it was fascinating to watch. And we just
Yeah.
kind of stood back and let it happen, you know.
Judgment
Um,
free zone. So you
yeah,
created a judgment free zone and he felt
right,
safe,
right.
right? And that was the other part of it too. You have to feel
Hmm.
safe and I have permission.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
It's brilliant.
So it's true. It happens. And you're right. You have to give them the space to figure it out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's very cool for him.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're excited. And someday he wants to create a graphic novel. So we'll see.
Ah,
We'll be announcing that on a Celebrate when that happens. Let
that's
me tell you.
very cool. That's very cool. Yes, I love me some comic books for sure.
Yep.
Yes, I'm a
Yep.
comic book guy too.
All right. Well, Kevin, this was wonderful and inspiring and uplifting. As I said, whenever I hear you speak, I come away feeling good, and we can all use more of that in the world. So thank you so much for being here and for giving us so much to think about and to take forward into our lives.
Absolutely. I'll leave everybody with this short little abbreviated quote. It's not the full quote. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now.
There you go. Begin it now. We will.
Done and
Thank
done.
you.
Take
Thank
good
you.
care.
You too. You too.
Godspeed. Peace.
Yes. And thank you all for joining us tonight, and we will see you next week. Bye.